our second speaker, Péter Füri, Center for Energy Research at Budapest, who will speak us about the complicated and combined effect of smoking and radium.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Péter Füri from the HUN-REN Center for Energy Research, and I will speak about the smoking and radon progeny. And yes, it is important to speak about smoking because it's the most important cause of lung cancer, and there are more than 1 billion smokers, so many people smoke, and most of them live in middle and low income countries, and tobacco kills more than 8 million people each year, so it's really a pandemic. And unfortunately, many non-smokers are also killed. So non-smokers are also killed. So it's not healthy for everyone to smoke. And radon is the second most important cause of lung cancer. And depending on the radon level and the smoking history, 3 to 14% of all lung cancers in the country are from radon. And it's an important question to investigate how the combination of cigarette smoke and radon exposure increases the lung cancer risk. Is it additive or is it multiplicative? It's not so clear to determine this. And smoke has an effect both on the environmental variables and the physiological variables, because if there is smoke in the air, the particle concentration is high. So less unattached progeny will be there, and the size distribution of the attached progeny will be also different as without smoke. And the physiological changes of the smokers are also significant, because smokers have much thicker and slower airway mucus than the non-smokers, and the airways are contracted, and the breathing is faster and shallower, so many physiological parameters are quite different for a smoker. And for long time smoking, typically COPD is developed, but it's quite a serious disease. So don't smoke. And for a smoker, both the altered size distribution of the radon progeny and the altered physiological parameters have to be taken into account for dosimetry. And that's why we did some simulations. We did calculations for a non-smoker, for a light smoker, and for a heavy smoker. For the light smokers, 6 cigarettes per day were modeled. For the heavy smokers, 24 cigarettes per day. And the coagulation of the cigarette smoke particles was also simulated, and the decreased unattached fraction was also taken into account. Yes, and we also modeled the altered physiological parameters of the smokers. Yes, and for the deposition rate and dosimetric calculations, 4 phases has to be modeled, because the deposition distribution and the dosimetry is also influenced by the breathing pattern and the size distribution. And 4 phases has to be distinguished to have these variables. Yes, and for light smoking, only slight changes are. The mucus is a bit thicker, but no contraction and no different breathing as for healthy people. It's from literature. I don't know how good it is, but for heavy smokers, significant changes are there. Much thicker mucus plus contraction plus different breathing pattern. Yes, and also an effect is that the airways are irritated. So increased mucus secretion is there, and the airways are contracted. And if there is COPD, the alveolar structure is also damaged. And because of the damages, the breathing is faster and shallower. So the breathing frequency was 17 per min, not 12 per min for a heavy smoker, but the target volume was lower because it was assumed that the healthy people and the smokers need to inhale the same amount of air. So that's why the breathing is faster and shallower. Another important change is the mucociliary clearance, because the cilia is strongly damaged, so the clearance is much lower, and the mucus layers are much thicker. So 5 times mucus layer was for the long-time smoker. This will have a huge effect on the dosimetry. I will explain later. And as you see, the mucus velocity is very slow for the smoker. So the clearance is quite bad for the heavy smoker. Yes, And the environmental changes were also modeled. So you inhale fresh cigarette smoke, but then it starts to coagulate, and aged smoke will fill the room. And and very high particle concentrations are in the first airways, so you have to model coagulation, and that's what I've done according to Pichelsdorfer and all. So yes, you see, this is the inhaled particle size distribution. As it goes down to the lung, it will go to bigger sizes, but because from two particles one is produced, the concentration is decreasing. But the main message is that the majority of the coagulation already happens in the exotoxic airways, and the size distribution change is not so big. So its effect is quite weak. It was a surprise for me. I thought that it will have much bigger effect than that, but no, that effect was not so big. That's because the size distribution hasn't gotten so big effect in this size range. So you go to a bit bigger particles, it will a bit decrease the deposition, but its effect is quite weak. But the effect that there are much less unattached progeny for the smoker, if there is smoke present in the air, it has much bigger effect, because the unattached progeny deposit with very big probability in the big bronchial airways and the exoteric airways. If you decrease that kind of progeny, here the deposition will be much lower. So cigarette smoke has some kind of protecting effect in that kind, because for the same concentration, the attached progeny are much more harmful than the attached progeny. Yes, and these are the four phases. The first phase is when you inhale the cigarette smoke. Then the second phase is when the cigarette smoke bolus goes down. The third phase is sitting between the cigarette and the two puffs. And the fourth phase is sleeping. And these phases has to be weighted with the time for a day, how long they last, because everything is calculated for 1 hour. And as you see, even for heavy smoking, the time, how long he's smoking, it's very short, because you can't smoke all the day, because you will die because of that. So the main weights are for sitting and sleeping. For sitting is the heaviest weight for heavy patients. And seeing the deposition rates, for the heavy smoker, the deposition rates are bigger for phase 1 and 2. This is mainly because of the contraction and the case that you inhale a bolus at the beginning of the inhalation, so it can go down deep to the lung and deposit. Yes. And if we go to phase 3 and 4, there is another effect what can be seen, that the breathing is shallower for a heavy smoker. So until the 14th generation, the deposition is bigger because of the contraction, but after that, the deposition is less because the particles don't go down so deep because of the shallower breathing. But yes, but I think smoking has some such physiological changes. It causes some physical changes that this kind of less deposition rate has not so big effect. And I will show the dose rates. For the dose rates, the doses are bigger in the small bronchial airways for the heavy smoker. This is because of the contraction. Less progeny deposit there, but the airways are smaller, so the doses will be bigger. But in the big bronchial airways, so in here, the doses are lower for the heavy smoker. First, it was surprising for me that how can it be lower, and then I realized that for a heavy smoker here, there is 50 microns of mucus, 50 microns. It is almost the range of the alpha particles. So here in the big bronchial airways, the shielding effect of the thicker mucus is so much that is outweighing the effect of the contraction. But here in the small bronchial airways, the contraction is higher. Here only a few microns are even for the heavy smoker, the mucus layers. So from these pictures, it seems that for the big baby, it's healthy to smoke. I don't want to say that. So I think there are many other effects in the dose, but can enhance the carcinogenesis. So In the small BB, even the doses are bigger, but in the big BB, I think even with smaller doses can be higher carcinogenesis because of the biological differences. Yes. And yes, and this is for phase 3 and phase 4, the same thing. So in the big BB, the doses are smaller for the heavy smoker. In the small BB, doses are bigger for the heavy smoker, the same thing. But the actual ratio of the dose rates compared to the non-smoker and the heavy smoker depend on the mucus thickness and the severity of contraction. So even the mucus is, if the mucus is not so thick, but not 5 times thicker, it's about 3 times thicker, but the contraction is bigger, not 20%, but more. Even in the big BB can be higher doses for the heavy smoker. So I'm always in the lack of data, input data, so I would need realistic data for smokers. It's not easy to find it in the literature. I only found it generally for all the airways, but I think that's so realistic. But I didn't find it in the mucus. Sure. Yes. Yes, and for phase 1, there are the biggest doses. Yes, because of the bolus inhalation. Thank goodness, this is the shortest dose, shortest weighting. So the weight of this is low. But for phase 1, there is a quite high dose rate in the small bronchial airways for the heavy smoker. So this is quite high. Usually this peak is not so high for healthy people and for non-smokers. So this shows that the doses are elevated very much for the heavy smoker in this region. Yes. And as conclusions, smoking has diverse effects on both the size distribution of the radon progeny and the physiological properties of the subject. And it's very important that unattached fraction is decreased if cigarette smoke is present. And the smoking related breathing pattern has to be also modeled. And the contracted airways and the thicker, slower airway mucus for heavy smoker has to be modeled also. And more progeny deposit in the heavy smokers with bronchial airways. Yes. And the dose rates, assuming the same inhaled air volume in the big BB are lower, but in the small BB higher for heavy smoker. And I would like to highlight that if COPD is caused, mostly the breathing frequency is also increased much more than in this case. So also the inhaled air is increasing because the lung is damaged and you need to inhale more to get the same oxygen level. So according to my calculations, if you get COPD, in every airways the doses are higher. So I think smoking is elevating the doses with high probability if there is more air inhaled. So the subject, so the health status of the subject has to be also modeled in lung dosimetry. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter, for this interesting presentation, and thank you also for keeping time. Our last speaker.